Hello, and welcome back to Let's Play Alundra. As you recall in the last episode, our goal for this evening, basically, is for Alundra to protect Jess, while Maya protects Septimus from what we assume is, Ronan, but Jess has other plans. He's asked us to put ourselves to bed, and this is not automatic. I can do this. I still have control over my character right now. But apparently Jess is stopping us from leaving the house. You'd think that the best place for us to be is right to the door, but we know from when Klein was a monster that doesn't actually stop people from getting into individual houses. So nothing to do but to go to bed. Way to stand guard, Alundra. Yeah, so for all of the sort of genre savviness that some of the characters have displayed up until this point, up to and including, you know, the two heroes going united to face Ronan in the church and splitting up to appropriately protect the most important characters, this particular scene does not go along very well with that sort of self-awareness of the game. It's actually pretty standard for stupid things that video game characters do to screw themselves. I think we all know where this scene is going. So yeah, this is basically a nice scene transition here. I know that we've completed our 5th dungeon, and hello Maya. She never has anything nice to say, so... But today she's a particular downer who breathes not the foul air of this world any longer. That's a pretty awful way to put the news that she just delivered. Keep the commentary to a minimum for this scene to maximize the emotional impact. This is by far the closest we've gotten to any of the individual deaths in the game so far. And I think the way these scenes are constructed do a really nice job of illustrating the unique character that each of the many villagers have. Note that Ronan is here and Giles still stands behind him. We translate immediately to the funeral scene. It's the first time we've directly seen a funeral scene in the game so far. Sort of everything about this scene and the subsequent scene shows a tremendous attention to detail in terms of constructing the villagers and their personalities and how they respond to these events. Note that Ronan still leads the procession, which very quietly indicates that the villagers still trust him to some extent, and the fact that many of them, including the mayor, even though they appear to be on Alundra's side, are aware that they worship Melzus. Notice that Maya stands all the way in the back. Notice, for example, that Fane stands behind Ludus, noting the fact that he's definitely the dominant personality in their relationship. A lot of very small things. Cephas the Gravedigger comes in. Now, each family in turn is going to pay their respects to Alundra, and they each have a unique animation for the order they come up to pay their respects and which one speaks to Alundra and what happens afterwards. This is Naomi and Yuri. This is Mead and the twins and his wife. Wendell, I guess, didn't make it. Nobody sent the older folk to the funeral. Meanwhile, the whole time, Maya is standing in the background while Alundra and Ronan are staring face to face across the tombstone the entire time. It's very tense. Keisha goes by herself, Giles is not here. Again, it's difficult to tell the people apart, specifically because they're mostly palette swaps of each other, but they still carry their own individual personalities. Again, Ludus is the one who leads her, specifically Beaumont and Thaya and his wife, Thaya, I forget how to pronounce it, have their own bouquet, symbolizing they're the leaders. And that about wraps it up. There are a couple of families who are not present here. Sierra's not here. Myra isn't here, although she's basically been crazy with grief ever since her daughter died. And there's one other family that we actually haven't seen at all in this game. There's a good reason for that we're going to explore a little bit later. Here's another nice dynamic. Maya chooses to say nothing to Alundra, because she understands what he's going through the best of anybody since she lost her mother to Melzus. And of course, the scene ends again with Ronan still locked in, eye-to-eye contact with Alundra himself. Still automatic here, but this is one of the roughest scenes in the game. Cannot speed up the text here. They want you to read every letter of this. So not only is Ronan or some other agent of Melzus responsible for Jess's death, but we are now going to have to fight the fact that the village is going to believe, since Ronan puts us forward to the truth, that we're responsible for Jess's death. On top, so with that scene out of the way, and all of its impending, all included gravity, I suppose now would be the best time to sort of take care of some side stuff to clear the air a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is... Actually, we're going to see another cutscene, because this key apparently unlocks Jess's last diary entry. Now this, I think, working design's really screwed this up, because look at the way Jess's diary reads. We can't speed this up, but it uses all of his accents, you know, oi, this is not good, you know what I am saying, you know, all of his little verbal tics, which nobody would actually write, I don't believe. People don't... Those speech patterns are mostly unconscious, so there's no reason for him to put them into a diary entry. It's just very goofy, you know. It goes along with the entire theme of most working designs translations, where the individual lines are translated without context. And of course, this covers exactly what we knew happened, which is Jess goes to check out Ronan totally by himself, which is, you know, ridiculous considering that he's currently keeping under in his home a heavily armed warrior with magical powers and packed to the gills with weaponry and potions and healing stuff and magic spells and all this crazy stuff that Jess never has access to on a daily basis. So it's twice as stupid considering we were under his roof. I mean, it's a wonderful gesture of him to try to keep the person that he considers to be his son safe, but we're also very clearly much better suited to this sort of thing than he is, and it drives me crazy when characters die in video games because of that choice. It's just such a senseless tragedy. Anyway, the point of doing this is because, aside from progressing the story, it also gives us this broken piece of armor, and we'll do what we need to do with that a little bit later. When you first see the scene, it kind of looks like Alundra went to bed, woke up, and sort of hallucinated Jess, but we're actually just sort of replaying some of the early scenes from when we met Jess earlier in the game. And the fact that most of these scenes come from the very, very beginning, you know, the very first time we wake up in his house, and later on a couple of the other scenes, sort of points to the fact that we haven't actually had a lot of interactions with Jess outside of the opening scenes of the game, which is kind of interesting, I suppose. Yeah, well, I guess part of the emotional impact of that is that Jess believed he was sort of temporarily housing us until we wandered off, and that we would leave him alone again, but in reality it turned out to be completely the other way around. Now we'll revisit the scene where he first made an item for us. I guess now he won't be making the Holy Sword. I guess now Ronan is free to kill Ludus too, considering Ludus isn't going to be getting Jess to smith the Holy Sword anytime soon. Note that this cutscene replaying also highlights again the palace that sunk into the North Lake, which also, not uncoincidentally, is where the Seven Crest altars go. So it's pretty obvious that's where we're going to be heading fairly close to the end of the game. It's more or less what we will, for now, consider to be our final objective, and we'll see how that pans out as the game continues on. So yeah, the scene also shows the consistency in Jess's behavior, where he first went to the coal mine to check things out before we went ourselves, as opposed to, you know, very similar to this scene where he went to check out Ronan before we had the opportunity to deal with that situation ourselves. And of course now the situation is still not dealt with, whereas the coal mine we took care of. And again, that's the last scene they choose to show us here, the one where he meets us after we left the coal mine, just the one last parting shot. The most horrific day in Alundra's life. I mean, that doesn't even begin to describe it. We don't really find out what happened to Alundra's actual biological parents, or at least not in the overall material of the game itself. It might be in the manual. But he certainly just lost what we're led to believe he considers to be a father figure. Also note that there's a very obvious emptiness the player should be feeling here, because it's the first time a villager died, but you don't hear, you know, the banging from the smithy as Jess makes whatever item we get from where that person died. It's a big deal. But the game doesn't give you a lot of time to grieve. This is Gustav, someone we've never actually met before in the game so far, because he is the town drunk, and we'll see this when we actually get to go inside his house. It's the house between Klein and Sybil's house, and it's the location of our next dream dungeon. Remember, the game generally alternates between real-world dungeons and dream dungeons, so we've got a dream dungeon up next. But the first thing we're going to take care of is basically to figure out what we're supposed to do with the battered armor that we picked up out of Jess's little treasure chest, now that we finally found out what's in there. So let's go do that. While we're on our way, we're going to pass by a bunch of the teleport archways, so I'll activate them as we go. We'll pick up one, I believe, right over here to the east. to the north of the lair of the Reptilicus Maximus. Yeah, here's the first one we're going to look at. Again, there's no point in using these to teleport, so I'm just going to activate them and leave, just to show you which arch corresponds to which gateway. Someone astutely pointed out in the comments of the first video where I activated these, when we first visited Nerud's lair, that the location of the gate in the central gate room corresponds roughly to the geographic location with respect to Inoa Village, and that is certainly correct. The only problem I have with that, and the main reason I complained when I pointed out when I first activated the gateways, they don't really have a correspondence to, you know, an obvious correspondence when you're in the main gate room. The only reason I pointed that out is because compare this to games like Twilight Princess, maybe not Twilight, well, yes, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, where the warps effectively exist for pure player convenience. You're allowed to select where you want to go, even in Link to the Past. You're allowed to select where you want to go from a map. Yeah, here's Lurvy's house. It should have been pretty obvious where we were going, considering we had a piece of junk that had to be repaired, and we knew he was another smithy. Anyway, warps like that should exist, that exist entirely for player convenience, should be as unambiguous as possible. It just sort of bothers me that there's a room, you know, with completely unmarked gateways. The player should have a completely zero chance of guessing wrong. That's all. I guess that's the only problem I have with that in particular. Anyway, so we bring the ancient armor to Lurvy, and since we saw the scene where he dropped down the chimney in his house to the back and saw him repairing stuff, he will repair this for free. If we hadn't seen that scene, he'll still repair the armor, but it'll cost us some money. Not that money means anything right now. Anyway, for completing that sequence, we get the ancient armor, which is our next armor upgrade, the third piece of armor that we get, counting the default as the first. And since we've gone ahead and activated some of the archways, now we can activate this other one next to Lurvy's house. Obviously, Lurvy is the far southeast, so this is the southeast gateway. The only one we've activated that brings us closer to Inoa in a meaningful way is the other one that we just saw in this video. And there's a couple more treasures that we can pick up while we're here, so it's good that we, and I wouldn't have spotted them if I had walked back directly. I'd actually sort of, this is one of the infinite number of treasures that I forgot to pick up. Yeah, so I wanted to get to those three chests over there, and it sort of occurred to me that we've been passing by them several times over the course of this game, and I never actually bothered to address that. You can see up there there's a holder for the magic seeds, and there's actually some really neat stuff, a bunch of useful treasure chests we can pick up by heading to the left and to the right. So I'll start with the left. First, of course, is a Gilded Falcon. You know, as it almost always is, one of the easy things we sort of stumble on most frequently in the overworld. These three chests all contain herbs, and I was a little disappointed I didn't even get money out of these, and certainly I don't need health right now. And in fact, even if you don't have maximum health right now, it's not in your best interests to use those to top off your health, because right here to the south is a life vessel, which is cool. So that's our 41st. We have almost all of them now, even though we still have several dungeons to go before we complete the game. So let's head back around and see what's on the other side, on the right side. This is also really important. It's actually a really good idea to pick this up right now, or as early as possible. In fact, again, this is something you can pick up as soon as you get the fire rod. You can see over to the right that this little series of ledges leads to one of those briar bushes that we need the fire rod to burn down. It's in your best interest to get this to do this as soon as you get the fire rod, because one of the very few magic seeds in the game that gives us our third magic charge, and as we all know, magic is completely broken in this game, so the ability to use 3 bits of magic before we have to refill, as opposed to 2, is actually a pretty big deal. I mean, 5 or 6 castings of magic will kill most bosses in the game, so pretty important. So now we're south of Tarn's Manor. This is, I guess, a little area of the overworld that I didn't explore very much during some of my previous play sessions. I guess that explains why I missed those pretty easy to find treasure chests. Let's go activate this gate over here. Again, this is directly east of Inoa Village, so it's kind of not obvious which one this is going to correspond to. It's the one to the west of the Nerud statue. That leaves 4 for us to activate. One of which is actually not accessible to us right now, and we will be seeing that in a few episodes. Anyway, we do have our next objective, so let's go take care of that. The first thing we have to do is go find Gustav's house and talk to everybody outside it. Once that's done, we can enter and meet Eileen for the first time, Gustav's daughter. She's completely crazy. She's got multiple personalities, and we've never met her until now. We will do that on the next episode of Let's Play Alundra. See you then.